There's something almost no one dares to say out loud. Many people aren't stuck because God hasn't answered. They're stuck because they continue living as if nothing has been prepared. It's an uncomfortable paradox, I know. You pray, you believe, you hope, but deep down, you still act as if the future depends only on luck or circumstance. And that's exactly where most people miss out on 2026 before it even begins. Here is the counterintuitive statement. It's not faith that's lacking. It's a lack of commitment, because believing without adjusting decisions is merely spiritual comfort. Jeremiah 29:11 wasn't written to calm you momentarily. It was written to align you with a specific future. God speaks of plans, direction, and hope, but almost no one learns how to live from that in real-life situations, with bills, pressures, and doubts knocking at the door. What if I told you that the biggest mistake isn't asking for little, but continuing to ask for what has already been granted? That, perhaps 2026 doesn't require a major external change, but a simple yet profound internal adjustment. Throughout this video, you'll realize that this isn't about empty positive thinking or superficial spirituality. It's about aligning your mind, attitude, and consistency with what has already been declared about you. And that changes everything faster than you imagine. God has already prepared it. Stop begging and start taking your stand. Jeremiah 29:11. Do you know what the most controversial part of Jeremiah 29:11 is? It's not that God has good plans, almost everyone repeats that. The game-changing part is understanding that it's not a maybe, it is a project piece, direction, and a future. And when you enter 2026 carrying only fear and bad memories, you try to negotiate with God as if He were undecided. But, as the text says, you already know. Now think about it. Many people live like heirs who don't open their wills. They pray, they fast, they cry, but inside they continue to see themselves as someone who maybe deserves it. Except that biblical faith is not begging. It's about aligning your heart, mind, and attitude with what God has already declared. That's when taking possession stops being jargon and becomes a posture. You stop asking for proof and start acting like someone who believes. Not in a fake way, but in a firm, simple, and consistent way. And if you want something practical right now, take Jeremiah 29:11 and translate it into everyday language. Write it in a short sentence. In 2026, I will walk in peace with direction and a future, because God planned it. Then stick it in a visible place and use it as a filter. Decisions, people, habits, opportunities. Because the truth is, before God changes things outside, He usually adjusts the map inside. And that's precisely where the next step begins. Did you like this topic 1 in this format? 3 paragraphs, 5 lines, direct and fluid? Do you want any adjustments? To expand it? Make it more biblical, more emotional, more Napoleon Hill, or insert specific keywords that you use on the channel? The invisible mistake, praying for what has already been released. There is a silent error that keeps many people stuck, even those who love God and are faithful, to keep asking for what has already been granted. It sounds strange to say this, I know. It even sounds irreverent. But look at the biblical pattern. When something has already been promised, the attitude changes. You don't beg for an inheritance. You learn to manage it. And that's exactly where many people go wrong. Imagine a bank account that's already full. The money is there, available, legitimate, in your name. But if you never withdraw it, never use it, never make decisions based on it, your life remains the same. In the spiritual world, it works similarly. Blessings released need to be consciously assumed, not with arrogance, but with alignment. It's about stopping saying, God willing, when He has already said, I want it. A simple exercise that changes everything. Replace the request with a responsible affirmation. Instead of, "God, bless me one day," say, "God, show me today how to walk in the blessing you have already prepared." This changes your focus, your posture, and your choices. You begin to notice opportunities you previously ignored. Avoid paths that sabotage your future. And without realizing it, you begin to move differently. And when the movement changes, something inside you begins to ask for more clarity. Exactly what we will unlock in the next topic. The mind needs to be in agreement with heaven before life can change. Here's a point that almost no one really delves into. God may have released something in the spiritual realm, but if your mind is still in survival mode, you unknowingly block access to it. It's like trying to install new software on an old system. It causes conflicts. That's why the Bible insists so much on renewing the mind. It's not motivational talk, it's a spiritual strategy applied to real life. Notice how many people profess faith with their mouths, but make decisions out of fear. They say they trust, but always act expecting the worst. The brain learns patterns. It repeats what it has been trained to repeat. If you've spent years thinking about scarcity, rejection, or failure, your mind will try to protect you by keeping you small. The good news? This can be reprogrammed. Not overnight, but with daily intention. A practical step that really works. Choose one decision per day representing the future you believe in can be simple. Organizing finances, studying something you've been putting off, ending a toxic cycle, asking for the right help. Small actions teach your mind that you're no longer living in the past. And when the mind begins to agree with what God has already declared, life begins to align, which leads us directly to the role of visible actions in the real world. Faith that doesn't move becomes just pretty talk. Here comes a truth that is unsettling, but liberating. Faith without action becomes elegant self-deception. It's not a lack of spirituality, it's an excess of passivity. Many people believe correctly, speak correctly, pray correctly, but they live waiting for a push from heaven while remaining stuck in the same place. But the biblical pattern is different. When you move, the path appears. Notice how opportunities almost never arrive ready-made. They come disguised as uncomfortable decisions, difficult conversations, changes in routine, or new learning experiences. Sometimes, the miracle begins when you update your resume, organize your finances, study something you've always avoided, or cut out a habit that keeps you small. It seems too simple, right? But that's exactly where most people freeze. A very real example. If you say you believe in a different 2026, but continue using your time the same way, consuming the same things and postponing the same decisions, nothing changes. Now, when you align your actions with what you say you believe, something curious happens. Doors begin to appear where before there were only walls. And this is not luck. It's coherence in motion. But there is a silent enemy that tries to kill this process before it yields results. And that's what we need to talk about now. The silent enemy, the doubt that sabotages from within. Is there anything more dangerous than disbelief? To believe halfway, doubt doesn't usually shout. It whispers. It leaves you excited in the morning and tired in the afternoon. You hear the message, agree, even get excited. But when reality hits, your mind automatically reverts to the old script. This isn't for me. It never works for me. Better not get your hopes up. And without realizing it, you pull the brakes yourself. Doubt acts like a termite. It works hidden, slowly, corroding decisions before you even realize it. You might even start something new, but abandon it early. You might even pray, but already expecting no. You might even act, but afraid to go all the way. And the problem isn't making mistakes. It's not to maintain the posture. Enough time to see the results appear. Almost no one talks about this, but most give up just before the tipping point. A simple yet powerful exercise. Whenever a thought of doubt arises, don't argue with it. Respond with what you've already decided to believe. Something like, I don't base my life on how I feel today, but on the path I've chosen to follow. This seems small, but it trains your mind not to take the wheel. And when you stop negotiating with doubt, something changes internally, because now you're ready to assume a different identity, which is exactly the next level of this conversation. Assuming a new identity changes everything before any outcome. This is where the most profound turning point occurs, and almost no one consciously realizes it. Everything changes when you stop trying to conquer a future and start living from a new identity. While you see yourself as someone trying to succeed, every obstacle seems like proof that it's not for you. But when you change your starting point from neediness to conviction, the internal game changes completely. Notice how confident people don't react the same way. They make mistakes, adjust, and keep going. Not because they are better, but because they have already decided who they are before the result appears. When you start to see yourself as someone guided, supported, and growing, your choices become firmer. You stop accepting just anything. Stop over-explaining yourself. Stop sabotaging yourself before even trying. And that's not arrogance. It's alignment. A simple yet powerful practice. Begin narrating your decisions from this new identity. Instead of, I'll try to see if it works, say, this is a step consistent with the future I'm building. It seems like a detail, but it changes everything. How you speak shapes how you act, and how you act confirms who you believe you are. And when this identity stabilizes, an inevitable question naturally arises. How to sustain it in daily life without reverting to old patterns. That's exactly where we get to the next point. Sustaining the daily process is what separates enthusiasm from transformation. Here's a simple, yet brutally honest truth. It's not the intensity of one day that changes life. It's the consistency of many ordinary days well lived. Many people start strong, enthusiastic, full of expectation, and stop precisely when the process becomes silent, when there is no applause, no visible sign, or high emotion. That's when almost everyone reverts to their old pattern. Real transformation happens in the invisible moments of everyday life. It's when you choose to act right, even when you don't feel like it, to think better even when you're tired, to keep going even without immediate results. It seems like a small thing, but this repeated small thing creates a solid identity. It's like the gym. Nobody changes their body in a week, but those who show up every day change everything without even realizing it. Life works the same way. A practical strategy that helps a lot. It creates simple and sustainable rituals. It doesn't promise grandiose things. It decides on something achievable. 10 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of organization, one conscious decision per day. Less talk, more repetition. This keeps you in the game when the excitement fades, and it always does at some point. When you learn to sustain the process, something curious happens. You begin to realize that you are no longer fighting against yourself. Resistance decreases, clarity increases. And then the final question naturally arises, the one that defines whether all this becomes just inspiration or a real change of course. Deciding to stop reverting to the old self is a point of no return. There comes a point when you realize something is somewhat uncomfortable, but liberating. The biggest risk is no longer trying and failing, it's reverting to who you were before deciding to change. This is the point of no return. Not because everything has become easy, but because staying the same starts to hurt more than moving forward. It's when the old pattern no longer satisfies, but the new one is still under construction. Many people think that relapse is failure, but in practice, relapse is information. It shows you where you still need to adjust, strengthen, or simplify. The problem isn't slipping up, it's using the slip-up as an excuse to give up. Those who truly change learn quickly, adjust quickly, and move on. They don't dramatize, they don't blame themselves excessively, they don't turn mistakes into identity. A simple yet powerful exercise. Every time you notice an old behavior trying to return, instead of fighting it, ask yourself an honest question. Does this align with the person I'm becoming? That question alone creates space for awareness. And awareness changes choices. Repeated choices change destiny. When you stop romanticizing the past and begin to respect the process you are experiencing now, something internal finally aligns. And it is precisely this alignment that prepares the ground for the final point, the one that transforms all this knowledge into a clear direction for the future. Clear direction emerges when decision meets compromise. There is a dangerous myth that confuses many people, believing that clarity comes before the decision. In practice, almost never. Clarity usually emerges after it's the decision you make that matters. While you wait to feel 100% certain, life is on pause. But when you choose a path responsibly, even with fear, the direction begins to reveal itself step by step. Notice how everything that truly grows starts out somewhat hazy. Nobody begins knowing all the details. You learn as you go, adjust in motion, and understand better in the middle of the process. When you make a commitment to a routine, a project, a new lifestyle, your mind stops, spinning in circles, and starts organizing priorities. The noise decreases because now there is focus. A simple action that unlocks this. Write down a clear decision for the next month. Not for the whole year, just for the next 30 days. Something like, I will act in this direction daily, even without guarantees. Then, protect this decision from excessive outside opinions and self-sabotage. Less external consultation, more conscious execution. When decision and commitment meet, something inside calms down. You may not know exactly where you're going, but you know you're no longer standing still. And that feeling of being in real motion is what prepares you to close this cycle with maturity and intention, transforming all of this into a definitive call to action. When you take a stand, life responds. There's a quiet moment when everything starts to change, and almost no one notices it at the time. It's not when the result appears. It's when you definitively position yourself internally. Life responds to this. People start treating you differently. Opportunities arise from unlikely places. Decisions become simpler. Not by magic, but because now there is coherence between what you think, say, and do. This stance isn't about arrogance, it's about firmness. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop asking permission to experience something better. You stop negotiating with what holds you back. When something no longer aligns with who you're becoming, you simply don't. Engage with it. No drama, no speeches, just mature choice. A very real example, when you decide to take your life seriously, you start taking your time seriously. You cancel what drains you, invest in what builds you up. You sleep better, make better decisions, choose better. It seems like a detail, but repeated details become direction, and sustained direction becomes concrete transformation. And it is precisely here that everything you have heard so far ceases to be mere understanding and begins to demand something greater: conscious application. Because knowledge that doesn't become practice becomes a burden. And now that you've come this far, the question is no longer, does this make sense? But rather, what are you going to do with all of this from now on? Now let me tease you gently but honestly. What you just heard isn't meant to inspire you for a few minutes. It's meant to make you responsible for a new attitude, because if you truly understand all of this, you can no longer live the same way expecting different results. The question isn't whether God has something prepared. The question is, what will you do starting today with what you've already understood? Think honestly. What decision have you been putting off? What habit do you know you need to adjust? What area of your life demands immediate alignment between faith and action? Don't answer me. Answer yourself. Because real change begins when you stop deceiving yourself and start committing, even with fear, even without all the answers. And let me ask you something directly. If 2026 ends exactly like the last few years, will that be acceptable to you, or has the time come to acknowledge that living below your means is also a choice? The knowledge you've gained here only transforms into power when it becomes daily practice. Small, simple, consistent, but practical. If this content made sense to you, if it challenged you, if it helped you see things you didn't see before, subscribe to the channel. Now, turn on notifications because here we don't deliver empty motivation. We deliver clarity, direction, and real growth. And comment below. What decision will you make starting today? This isn't just engagement. It's the first public step of someone who has truly decided to change.